I really appreciate that because the director told me really early on that I was deadpan and I didn't have to expression.
Wow. No.
I was like,
Not this.
We feel
cool,
you.
I got
Yeah.
it, don't worry.
Hi, my name is Akua Gyamfi. Welcome to Blacklisted Conversations. This is where we gather together some brilliant black creative minds to have some powerful, insightful dialogue. In this episode, we'll be diving into the heart of Bob Marley, One Love, a cinematic masterpiece celebrating the reggae icon's life story. Stay with us as we break down key decisions, challenges, triumphs, and the significance of a film like this, along with its impact on those who were involved in making it. Let's get into Blacklisted Conversations, the Bob Marley, One Love episode.
Oh, you want to start? From the beginning.
Guys, thank you for being here.
Nice to be here.
How you all feeling?
Feeling good? Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So first of all, I wanted to get the guys who watched the film this weekend to share one word that best describes how Bob Marley, One Love made you feel. Anyone wants to go first?
Mine was very warm. I felt so warm. Like, I can't stress how warm I felt. But it was, my family's from Jamaica, and it was really beautiful to see Jamaica and see the story. But yeah, very warm was how I felt.
For me, it was a cornucopia of emotions and memories and good feelings, nostalgia, yeah.
So not one word, a lot of things.
That's why I say cornucopia. I think that's the best.
Cornucopia.
What does that mean?
It's like
It's
a bunch of stuff.
abundance of good thoughts and feelings.
That's a great one. I'm gonna write that
I
down.
was trying to think what it could be, but that
It's
sums up
cornucopia.
the things that you guys created.
So because you said a few, I'm going to say my two.
Right.
I feel really proud. I feel really proud and tender. Tenderness in so many ways, seeing love depicted, you know, the love of the island, the love of self, the love of people, the love of family, the love of culture. Just seeing people being tender with each other was just really, really moving. And yeah, I think I walked away feeling warm, but yeah, tenderness was the big takeaway.
So for the One Life guys, how does hearing those reactions feel? Like, what does that make you feel?
Like we've left something in the world. I think that was one of my worries, concerns, just playing a real person, like playing life that has actually happened on the earth. We're leaving it in a place where people recognize it. They might not recognize something and learn something. Something would be left in their hearts and their spirits, and that we have given the world, I guess, an education through Bob's legacy. Because I think that older generations, like our parents, they'll be like, I know Bob, I know the Wailers. My family even have friends and families who knew them and have stories, personal stories in relation to him. But if they're going to learn something new, I think that we've shifted the perspective on this legend instead of just giving a cardboard cutout of what we think the audience wants. We're actually giving them a chance to think and question and like dive deeper into who this man is, still is, and who the people were around him that served him in the best way in order for him to lead the life and career that he did.
Thank you. And then
That's nice to hear, you know, that's nice to hear. Nice to hear the word warm and tender as well, because, you know, it didn't always trying to understand Bob's experience, specifically like his whole life, you know. I was lucky because I got to talk to a lot of people who knew him and loved him, you know, including guys who he grew up with when he was 12, 13, but it didn't always feel warm, you know. It didn't always feel like trying to get underneath the pressure he was under, and understanding that experience. It's nice to know that the film, you know, leaves you with that feeling. I guess it's not really my job to think. I was never thinking in those terms. I was never thinking about the feeling that I wanted to give people. That's, I guess, more your role. Mine was just understanding Bob's psychological point of view, like where he was at, and trying to learn the language, you know, trying to learn the language and trying to make sure I talk like Bob talks. And so I was just busy with that. And it didn't always feel warm and tender, you know. So it's nice to hear.
And Reinaldo, the director, like.
I mean, everything that Lashana and Kingsley just said, it feels great that we were able to have that impact. If the movie has that impact, it means you've done something right. At least we tried. We were on the path to that. Bob's music said it all, you know, and our music is just a vessel into that message. So I'm glad that it's resonating on that level. It means a lot to us, for sure.
I think what's wild is that there hasn't been a fictional tale of this icon ever. I mean, we've had documentaries, but not a story told of his life. And Reinaldo, can you speak to, do you know why it's never occurred, or?
Just don't think it was the time. I think the universe was on our side. Just wasn't the time. So from the very first conversation I had, Ziggy was on the call. I thought, oh, if Ziggy's here, it must be real, you know. It's like, that's Bob's son. And it was real. They were looking for a director. They were looking for a vision, and there was a script, but it needed work. And so I just think it was the time. The family wasn't ready until now, for whatever reason. That's fortunate for us.
Yeah.
Fortunate for us, it took time to mature and be ready and get the rights and whatever we needed to get it done. And honestly, find who was going to play Bob. That takes a long time. And honestly, maybe it was just waiting for Kingsley to get a little older so we could right in the mature pocket. You know, we just waited for Kingsley. Yeah, which is true, and it is true. There's so much of that is true. I mean, there's no movie if you don't find someone as talented as Kingsley and as daring to take on this role. It's not an easy one. It's so challenging to even come close, to even want to come close to it. So it just was a confluence of events that got us here, and thankfully for us, we found these two magicians.
I love that, you're magicians.
You know you're a superstar.
I'm a superstar.
There's a few people, maybe just one or two, who, you know, it makes sense to say they're unplayable. You know, and I think Bob's one of them people, you know, you go, can't play Bob, you know, who can play Bob? Like he's too big, he represents too much, he means so much to so many people. There's no one like him in a way, you know. I was thinking Mandela, like there's a very, very small group of people, and so you can't, he's kind of the unplayable, and that's why from the beginning, the only reservation I had was like, do these guys know I can't sing? Do these guys know I can't dance? And do they know like I'm bigger than Bob? Like, do they know like in terms of like transformation, this is, but everyone was agreed, the spirit of the man and the culture and the vulnerability and who he was on a personal level was to be explored, not mimicked, not copied. It feels to me now like a love letter from the family to their dad, you know. It's like an acknowledgement, we see you, you know. We understood, we understand what you were going through, and you still did it. And so for me as an actor, I go, well, I'm not trying to mimic him, I'm not trying to play him, I'm just trying to tap into a little bit of his spirit. It's not a copycat thing. And then it becomes really, there's a peace in that, you know, there's a safety in that. And having them there and having Neville there and everyone there was a great thing, you know. You hear these stories about families being on set when there's biopics and it's this nightmare, and it's like, no. That was how I found him, with them and through them. It was a community thing. It was really genuinely unique and special in that way, you know. Sometimes I'll be doing a take and I can hear Neville just there, you know, and it made me feel good. Normally it's annoying, you know, you're like, come on, shut up, but I was like, it made me feel good knowing that if he goes like that, you're good, you know, and if it's not good, trust me,
also
someone's
know.
coming to tell you.
Yeah, yes, yes.
That, you know,
Yeah.
that is what's great about working with somebody in Jamaica. They're going to tell you, you know.
they're
If
gonna
it
hold it
ain't
back.
working, we ain't moving on.
Can I just get, because you mentioned that obviously we know Bob's legacy and his spirit and how far-reaching his music and who he was, what he stood for globally, or how far-reaching it was. What did he mean to you, any of you guys personally, before this project exists, before you went to see it, before you got involved? What was your relationship with Bob Marley?
I was telling you guys earlier that my grandmother's mother and Bob's mother, first cousins. However, I don't know, none of our family are connected in that way. I didn't know that until 10 years ago. So when I kind of watch Bob, it's very interesting to watch because it's like, oh, that's actually, it feels, I'm Jamaican, I've just got my Jamaican passport, I'm very connected to the country, and it's like, oh, this other piece that, you know, even though I don't know him or don't know any of the family, I'm connected in that way. It just feels, that's where the warmth, I think, came from watching it. It was like, I felt all those things, like my passport's coming soon, and it made me feel like, oh, I'm so proud to be Jamaican. I think watching the film kind of added to that feeling. So I'm very, very, very grateful for you guys for doing that.
Anyone else like?
I mean, I've just grown up listening to his music and always loved everything about Bob. So that's it really.
Same.
Yeah.
Same, yeah.
Know all the words to his songs.
Yeah.
It's a part of
The backdrop of your upbringing,
Yeah.
was that the same for you, Lashana?
Yeah, I mean, I keep saying that's what made chores fun
Yeah.
at home. I actually like cleaning my house now because I had this music to like uplift me. From the womb up, you know, there's a vibration in reggae music anyway that is untouchable. But Bob's in particular just has, I don't know, just it resonates with you differently on like a molecular level. It feels as though there's something happening in you through listening and inhaling his lyrics that makes you shift slightly. Whether it be questioning yourself or questioning the world, or really just getting into who this artist was. How did he become the artist that he was? How did he translate his experiences into the most poetic, fine-tuned lyrics that always perplexes me, because I used to kind of read them as almost monologues. And like, what does this mean? And it was only through your portrayal that made me go, oh, it's connecting now. I'm getting to see it in this really intricate order that are connecting dots for me, from hearing him as a child, and then my grandfather owned a record shop, so I would hear his music in there, and then there would be reggae artists just around my family, so I would hear stories anyway, and I found that fascinating that he was just about like this profound man who's like small in stature but so big and powerful in energy. Could just be about London, just like, you're cool, yeah, cool, but also just happened to be an icon, but don't worry about it.
Yeah, same. That music just played through our house, through pirate radio station, through, you know, the main radio station. It was everywhere, his music, and I think as I got older, I kind of got a bit geeky and would like look up like the history and then connecting the dots of Marcia Griffiths and being like, oh my gosh, I listened to Marcia Griffiths. You know, so it's, and what's so beautiful for me is my family are Jamaican as well, and being able to watch the film, also making that connection with my family and understanding just how hard things were during that time. Like my mum came to England in response to the civil war that was happening at that time, so it's kind of like it being depicted as a really important part of history as well, like as a, you know, British Jamaican. So yeah, it's all of that depicted, yeah, and Bob, and also my partner's is directly related to Peter Tosh as well. Yeah.
So I'm gagging at the writing talent on this film. You've got Terence Winter, Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, Wolf of Wall Street, you've got Zach Bailey, King Richard, Creed 3, Frankie Flowers, Shooting Stars, and yourself, director of King Richard, and We Own the City, Monsters and Men, so, and of course Top Boy, because you're our fam, as we've already discussed. You're fam. But how did you guys come together on this script, and how did you manage to put ego aside and bring together this film?
I mean, we're still writing this script. Yeah, it's a constantly evolving process. The first script I received was written by Terence, and Frankie Flowers, and that was the first script. And it was a great skeleton for us, a great starting point, but obviously needed some work. And part of bringing Zach on was that I thought he did such a great job with the structure of King Richard, cracking the period of time. It was really about the structure for me. Where do we start? Where do we end? And that was critical. Obviously, I knew that there was a lot of work to be done with dialect and speak and just making sure that we get that part right. But it was, what's the story that we're trying to tell? As much as possible can we get to that? And so that was the better half of the first year with the script, was trying to crack that particular time. But that was the first approach to it. Obviously, it was, what's the emotion, what's the story that we want to tell? We had a lot of help from the family in that regard. Ziggy was a big proponent of that, which was really helpful. And the way I work, my actors also write, which is tremendous. We're constantly evolving that process. So many scenes changed, from locations to even moments with Kingsley and Lashana in the film. I remember there were scenes with the real Rastafarian prince that changed. It became the moment with Lashana and Kingsley in the bedroom. So there was some magic that happened even late in the game, which wasn't easy for dialect and getting those things in, but was great for the movie. So, for certainly, that's just the process of writing. It's constantly evolving. It's harder when you're dealing with dialect and so many changes and learning the language that they had to in this film. But certainly, the approach was what's the best movie that we can make? How do we integrate the songs into, what songs do we choose? How do we come into those songs? How do we weave them in? But with that timeline from 1976 and 1978, it gave us a snapshot of what actually Bob created during that time, so we could work backwards from there.
And just specifically that time period, why not A Birth to Death? Why that in between those two pivotal concerts?
I mean, we were never interested in doing a cradle to grave.
Okay.
I remember even from the first conversation with Ziggy, he was like, "Nah, man, we don't want to see at the beginning. We did. I don't want to jack up his. He does it a lot better than me." But he was like, "Nah, man, And he likes action movies. Like, he's such a fan of films, which is great. And of course, look, we shot stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor. It's just the nature of making films, But this timeline in particular, there was like an inherent structure. Obviously, the assassination attempt on Bob's life was such a critical moment, not only in Jamaican politics, but U.S. history, world history. Bob was famous in Jamaica, but he wasn't yet a global star. And then he doubles down and then creates Exodus, arguably the greatest album of the 20th century, including Kaya and other things that he did during that time. And then his diagnosis, which we know. But this film was supposed to be a celebration of Bob's life. Celebration of the musical genius, musical creation, and I know Kingsley helped out a lot tremendously in discovering that and diving really deep into who Bob was, pulled out things in the script that were flat or didn't propel that part of the story. And when you have great actors that help push to elevate that, Lashana included and so many others that forced us to be better, forced us to say, nah, this ain't gonna work, it just makes us all better. It was part of the challenge of making this film. It was just hard. Bob, the level was so high, the demand was so high for who he is, his story, his legacy. I think we all felt that, like you said, there were grip drivers, my drivers were like, nah, bro. Or like,
Everyone had a
drivers on Crafty, they were like, cool, but, So everybody was there, but it was supportive, like they wanted us to succeed. I never felt that there was anybody that didn't want to succeed. So having that level of guidance, like, we ain't gonna let you fail kind of thing. Like, we're gonna hold you up even if you're slipping, was tremendous. But it starts with the core relationship in this film, for sure. And that's the two people standing outside of you. So,
Lashana and Kingsley, when you guys saw the script for the first time and you read it through, what were your first reactions? And was it goosebumps? Was it like, oh my, I can't even put it into words.
It needs a lot of work.
Yeah. Oh, is that what it was?
It needs a lot of work.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of Bob's voice, the more I was listening to him, I spent a lot of time. Sadella sent me files with all of these interviews of Bob talking from 69 all the way through to 81. And it was about making sure that if Bob was in this scene, how would he say it, you know? And it was a process that went all the way through to the last day, you know, to all my life, you know. It was about getting specific, because I guess the realization for me was, you know, 6 weeks before we started shooting, I'm working every day trying to understand the language and trying to learn the language. And I got to a point where I go, oh, I need 10 years. I need to live in Jamaica for 10 years to understand. And I'm going hard. And I was like, oh, it's not a dialect, it's a language. It's because we had 9 people on set who were language experts. I had people, you know, Jamaican linguists from the university out there who were on Zoom with me every day, fine-tuning these things. I wasn't just not understanding Bob, I was misinterpreting him. So I'm trying to figure out what he's saying on my own. Yes, and what's deceptive is you understand 70–80% because it's English-based. But it was a real journey, and so understanding how much help I needed allowed us to go into the film with the right support there to make it feel like, here's the other thing. This is for Jamaicans, because anyone outside of Jamaica, I can do a 50% accent. And they'll be like, oh, you did great. So I'm thinking, the only people that know what's going on is the people in Jamaica, so I need to work to that drumbeat.
Absolutely.
You know, and it was a process of trying to find Bob's voice in the best way that I could in the time that we had. And I think the attempt to represent him authentically is all that mattered. You know, it was the attempt to do it. It wasn't, you know, the wonderful thing about Jamaican patois is it's the most muscular dialect, and like what it requires of you is so. It was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, but the most enjoyable. So yeah, I just wanted to feel him in it in the way that he spoke, and so we started filling it with Bob Talk. You know,
that's where I was before I got the script.
Right.
And if you remember Reinaldo, I met Ray in LA before I had the script. Coffee shop. Before I even had an audition, knew it was happening. I just heard it floating around me. My agents were talking about it. And I was not easy. And look, I'm not even going to apologize. I'm just going to take responsibility for that moment, because I was like, what's your plans? You know, what's the script looking like? Who's Mrs. Marley going to be? Are you going to uphold her right? Is she going to have a voice? What are we representing? What are you doing for Jamaica? I was asking all these questions.
What was your intention with those questions? Was it in the mind like, I want to do this role, or was it just like, I'm just giving you some heads up?
Whether I get the role or not.
Right.
This man has to know the task that he has ahead of him. As someone of Jamaican heritage, I have a responsibility as an artist of Jamaican heritage to take some kind of control, and I'm type A, some kind of control of this small meeting that I had, whether I got it or not, to know I had a hand in going, make sure that we do this country proud. Make sure we have a responsibility. We do. And if it's not going to be done in that way, feel free to walk away. Feel free to tell the whole studio, we're not doing it unless it's done in the way that it needs to be done. The way that it needs to be done will show itself, and it very much so did, through the writing, through, you know, having the discussions that we did, the rehearsals, the reshooting of things, the every single day going, actually, that line doesn't work, so rip the page, find it. Find it until it's right. The responsibility was high, and that usually falls on the director, the actors, whoever else. Every single person on that set had to make sure they knew that responsibility to ensure that this wasn't a film about Bob Marley and everyone around him. It was the film, and not the film to be the example. Just if there's no other film that's going to be made about him, we have this as a core of him that shows a real man that you created, not a person that people expect.
Help to sing these songs of freedom is all I ever have. Redemption songs.
When you write that?
All my life.
Also, just to speak that, because we know Bob, we think we know Bob, but Rita
Yeah.
The name is so powerful, but the woman behind the name, you guys had some questions about how you got into Rita and how you became and brought life to someone that we know her name, but not her spirit, heart, and as much as we feel like we should, actually.
So I wanted to ask you, in terms of what does it mean for you as someone with Jamaican heritage to play Rita Marley?
Still putting my finger on that one.
Yeah.
Still trying to let that sink in. And I realised very early, even though it was hard on you and that meeting, that I had to throw that away. I put a lot of responsibility on myself to make sure that Jamaica is represented and my culture is represented in the way that it deserves. For this, I really had to throw away this actor thing. I think we class ourselves as artists anyway. We can show our art in any way. This right now, everything that I've gone through in my career has amounted to a moment where I get to have a spiritual experience with myself and my art. So not only is that for me, it's also to represent someone who looks at life in a spiritual way and came together with someone who was a spiritual being who allowed themselves to be that for the world. They gave so much of themselves. So when I sat with Mrs. Marley, I had so many questions. I needed all the answers. I wanted to get them, write everything down, and go home and fine tune. I threw away the book and I just sat in front of her, cross-legged, and just soaked her in for hours on 2 occasions. And I was like, I don't really mind what you tell me. You can tell me nothing for 3 hours, and I've got your spirit. I've harnessed your energy, and no matter what is on that page and that script, I'm going to be able to come back to your spirit. I'm going to be able to come back to your vibration, which is what was most important to them. That's what they represented. So my responsibility was to ensure that she was spiritually upheld, and that every time you saw her on the screen, you felt her. So when you feel someone, you see them. You see the real them. It's not you articulating what you think they are. It's like it's an experience being in their presence. That's what I felt being around her, and that's what I wanted everyone to feel.
And you're dropped in that. I watch you in this film, and I'm like, when you're not talking, and it's it's incredible work when you lift it, you're the light. It's so amazing, and that's what you were.
Because spirituality came up, and everybody responded to the burning cane scenes, and
the Nyabingi drums.
Listen, like the cultural. The religion.
Mutabaruka.
That was us. You couldn't get more authentic than that. Like,
my man doesn't have shoes.
Legend.
Feet on the ground at all
Just
times.
him opening the gate.
I know.
I was like, he's a legend.
Feet on the ground.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those bits, and also definitely giving a bit of insight for those who will have judgment about Rastafarianism, dreadlocks. I went with my mum. She's an 81-year-old woman who's like, the smoking in the air. But she enjoyed the film. She came away with a bit of insight. So just can you speak to the importance of representation, filming in Jamaica, making sure you've spoken about how the responsibility was on your backs to make sure you got it right. But just, I can't imagine the spirituality in the room. I felt it through the screen. Yeah. So you guys being on set, what was that like?
I just have to give a shout out to our casting directors who did a phenomenal job. Corinne Chin in Jamaica, Carmel Cochran here in the UK, and Avi Kaufman in New York. And then the talent that came on to help support us. Michael Ward, James Norton, Michael Gandolfini, Hector Lewis, and David Kerr, Seiko. We just had so much talent to help support our film, and so much Jamaican talent. I think Kingsley said it. This was a film for Jamaica. This was for them, by them. We had real musicians on set. The real offspring, which is kind of amazing. When I would call cut, there'd still be like a little concert that was going on. It was like, it was in that kind of spirit. You can't fake that. There were some moments that you could not fake, just given the reality of who we cast in the film.
Everyone's there as well, so like I'm stressing.
Yeah,
leading up to the first couple days of shooting. Yeah. We're getting straight into the studio. I'm like, but then I get there, and everyone's Jamaican. Yeah. You know, and then Ziggy's there before we started. Ziggy did a prayer to his dad, and they all love Bob. You know, they all love him, and they mean, you know, there's man taking off their dreads and putting them away and putting, you know what I mean? It was a real spiritual thing for everyone involved,
Yeah.
you know, so that energy was there, you know. They're calling me Skip, walking around, you know, that I think there's some man who believed that Bob was with us, you know, like
Yeah.
it was
For
that.
sure.
So that was
It came
just,
through.
everyone there loves Bob and is from Jamaica. It's just me, Anthony Welsh and Tossin.
Yeah.
That's it, everyone else is Jamaican.
Yeah, it's true.
You know?
Yeah.
I just want to say, my mum went to the Jamaica premiere and she said someone had told her that the place that we built Bob's house, there was a tree there that had been like barren for like a very long time. When that structure came off, the tree started sprouting again.
Wow.
I just thought that was so profound.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an example of what it was.
I couldn't even doubt that, not that I'm saying you're lying, but it's just the way it came through the screen, that energy. I left with goosebumps, man. And I went home, drafted this to the backdrop of Bob's music, and I haven't necessarily played that for a while, so it was just like, let's all get it together and get that spirit through it.
I think as well, sometimes you watch films and you know you're watching a film and you're watching actors, and I'm watching this film and it didn't feel like a film, even though I'm in a cinema. It felt like I'm here, I'm in it. You brought me in it. I'm in the studio. It's my bit where the guy's in the studio and he's kicking his leg because he's when young Bob. I thought I was in there. I wanted you to hold on that just a little bit longer.
As Reinaldo.
Yeah,
that was so great.
It's just all of that. I just felt like I was part of it, and I think that's the spiritual. I think that's the spirituality element of it. I think that's everything that you've just talked about. It's just more. Yeah, there's like another layer to it that's kind of giving you guys the space to bring this to life in a way that is more than just film. I don't know, that's how I felt.
It feels like there's something in terms of like just mission that, and that was the message, another word to throw in there, that I really took away. Like I saw Bob and Rita as purpose partners, you know, they're in mission, like, so regardless of what happens, we got this job to do. Like I said, that moment when Rita's like, right, what's happened? And she's walking up the steps, right, I've got to deal with this. What's going on? Okay. It's like whatever it takes to get this message across, I take it on. I take this on as my mission. And that is spiritual. And that is definitely, that is the global message that I took away in terms of like, and everyone, the whole thing of I and I, you know, that connects all of us, this being global. So the fact that there's so many nationalities on set, being Jamaican, it's like, no, we're all one.
So we flipped the script on the word blacklisted. To be blacklisted is to be empowered, exclusive and included. So can you all share a moment and a brief moment in your career where you blacklisted yourself and turned a setback into a win?
I was so disappointed in 2016 when I'd been signed up to this project and it went on for 2 years and I was training to play this part. It was one of the great human beings of all time, and we lost the money. And I'd been working and I was in the Philippines and I was boxing, I was training, and I came back and nothing happened. And I feel so grateful now that it didn't happen and that it was Bob, you know, so yeah.
Okay, I have a similar story. I guess most actors have a similar story.
Yeah.
I signed up to my first show, my first US project that was gonna hold me and pay me for 7 years. And I did one season and it was my first lead. And I was so convinced that it was gonna go ahead, and it didn't. It got cancelled. And I thought it was the end of the world, much younger than now. I thought it was the end of the world. And then literally about 3 months later, that's when I got my US agent. I got like a project that changed my life, and then packed up everything here, went to LA, and then got Captain Marvel. So, and then I was like, oh, actually, if I was doing the show, then I wouldn't even be in LA and I wouldn't even be seen for this. So now I thank it for the setback, but that definitely was a setup for future.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I remember it was probably 6 months out of film school and my loan started to kick in. I had like $300,000 of debt, and I was like, man, I have a kid now. I don't think this filming thing is going to work out. So I was looking at, you know, any kind of job I can do during the night so I could write. And I was looking at Uber applications, and I had an orange car at the time, and they only took black cars at Uber at that time. So thank God, because I couldn't get the Uber job because of the color of my car, and because of that, I was able to eke out, you know, whatever I could in grants to just get me to that first film, which ended up being Monsters and Men, and the career started from there. But yeah, there was some roadblocks in there. It definitely felt like there were a few times where this wasn't gonna work out. So some faith in there led me to this point for sure.
Guys, thank you. Ethosheia, Cherrelle, Lashana, Kingsley, Monique, and Reinaldo. This has been Blacklisted Conversations. I'm so honoured to have this conversation with you guys. Bob Marley, One Love is out in UK and US on February the 14th. Go see it, enjoy it, feel what we feel, and appreciate every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright.
You like that one?
Yeah.
This is my message to you.